fucking gent riffs.
Okay, we're live. It pings me. I'm really curious to see how this goes, you know. Let me just do a quick audio check. I'm really curious to see how this goes. It says on my screen that you should also be getting the stream audio, or the music audio. We recommend that you use a bitrate of XYZ. Okay. Rainbow sucks. Okay.
Sick fucking gent riffs.
Yeah, I'm trying out a live stream style. So I figured if I'm mastering music, there's this thing called the performance meter. This is why I don't normally stream music production, because it uses up a ridiculous amount of CPU if you switch to the Windows audio driver. However, what you'll notice is that my CPU isn't being used up much right now, and I noticed that when I was mastering, it's not really an issue. I don't know about the audio quality, but I'm gonna assume it's good enough. If it's awful, I'll go back and redo it. But basically, mastering a live stream. Let's go. Get to see all the gear and stuff. Let me know if you can hear the audio. It says that you should be able to. That's the wrong song. That's amazing. Right, I've figured out what I can live stream now, and this is going to be really good for releasing music. Because I can just sit here mastering the song, which I've just finished. And then it acts as automatic music promotion, I guess. Alright. Just looking at this optical threshold. 19. That's set to 19. Discrete. Knocking off at 1 dB, 1 dB. 15, 15. The ratio. Right, so that's about dialed in. So what we can do is make that louder. Check my audio settings. Should be deafening people. That's actually quite cool because my mic's not picking up the speaker audio because it's quite a good microphone for this headset. I'm just looking at it in the... Damn. Oh yeah, it's brilliant. That is literally the background. What have we got? We got Art of War. We got... I'm learning to drive at the moment because I didn't do it during university, so financing some lessons for that. What else we got? I keep this in my room because it's quite nice. But we've got about 5 jars of honey in the house at the moment. What else we got? Classic. It's quite old, it's got dust on it. This is the zone.
What was that?
Yeah, in the UK it's not that bad. In Europe it's even better. Hangman. Yo, what's up? I've got the mastering studio open. Yeah. It's brilliant. I love the scream in that. It's good. This is an OG. If you know what this is, then you're a true Clone Wars fan. Fucking hell, this is dusty. I'm missing a top piece somehow on there, but droid tank. And my personal favorite is the gunship droid. I have a lot of spiders in my room. I like to say I keep them as pets because they catch all the annoying flies you get. Right, so just realized that's weird. This can go louder, but doesn't really want to go louder. Because what I can do when I enable this headphone feature is I can hear what the clip is taking off. So if I do that, you can hear what it's doing basically.
What was that?
case, for tracks like these, you don't really want to be raising them too much or else they lose their dynamics. So we'll graze it a bit. And then what happens is, I'm using this method called dual mono. So basically what's happening is, the two sides of the stereo are different. So speaker 1, speaker 2, they're being processed differently. Normally when you do stereo, dicks out for Harambe, yeah. Normally when you do stereo, you do the average of both the channels, and that's good for digital masters basically, because then you're dealing with digital clipping and stuff. It's not good for hardware masters, hence why dual mono is a thing. But the problem is you lose a lot of the stereo effect you get from dual mono, which is this really nice like analog sound. Is one of the things which makes analog sound good. So when we enable dual mono in this, it's going to process the two sides differently. And then what we do is we create what I like to call a delta gain region, where we're... I don't have a whiteboard to write on. Right, so what we do is we create a delta gain region where it's going to go into the clipper, and it's going to saturate. It's not going to remove 100% because it's not a hard clipper, but it's going to saturate and curve it back a bit. That's going to be back to -3 decibels, so that's not near the 0 decibel threshold where it's going to digital clip and make the file sound awful. That goes back to -3. Then what we do on the final output to make sure it's loud enough to be competitive, we'll put the ceiling at just under the 00 dB, and then we put that gain back up to basically catch any major peaks which are occurring, which will get bypassed by the first limiter. Normally this works without any hiccups, but you can generate hiccups basically when you're not operating with a load of hard limiters. Problem is hard limiters don't sound very nice. So what this is, it's creating a delta gain region of approximately 3 decibels on a volume meter or whatever, where any peaks in between that will get caught. Anything that's somehow getting through more than -3 decibels past the soft clipper is going to just sound bad on the output. But normally this is a hybrid, so it should in theory catch everything because it's a combination of a limiter and a clipper. But that won't sound as nice as if it's below the number of -3. So that's how you set up a delta gain region. 6 billion hertz. The other nice thing is, a lot of the time when you master, you cut out a lot of the dynamics. So what this is actually doing is it's cutting out the dynamics, and we're using this build is no, it's not as good as Sound Good either. That's magic. But what's happening here is every single file, once it gets run through a chain on the total mastering session, is getting he doesn't have Sound I have better stuff than Sound Goodizer. Don't worry, I'll build my own Sound Goodizer. So, attack, envelope, look ahead. This is all to do with transient control. So what's happening here is we're putting it into that first clipper. Sorry, I had spicy stuff for lunch, so it's getting in my throat. We're going to that first clipper, and then that's removing a little bit the dynamics and saturating a bit to give it a nice warm sound. And then it's going into this more rigid hard clipper. Well, not fully a hard clip, because this would be fully a hard clip on 100. But it's going into this more rigid clipper, which is a hybrid between a a soft clipper, and a brick wall limiter to then reintroduce a little bit of those transients using some transient shaping. That's basically like expanding the signal again. So what's happening now is essentially we create this 3 decibel region at the top of the mix to automatically smooth out any differences. And that's why I like to call the delta gain region. It's a method I've been using, and it's particularly good with dual mono. If you're not operating with, there's potential here for an audience. It'd be very good on Twitch too. I'm thinking about doing it on Twitch as well. I might start doing that. I just named it what I wanted to name it because I just want it on the channel. But I will probably do this more regularly when I do mastering and stuff. But the delta gain region basically is what levels everything out. If you're operating with a stereo signal, you don't need a very big one. If you're operating with dual mono signals, you'll find the delta gain region needs to be quite high because you'll find that the actual signal load, so the actual meter at the end here, if we take a look at it. So we're being shown how to master Doom-like industrial metal album product. I can change the title right now, actually. Yeah, let me do that. Boom. Yeah. So, when you have a dual mono signal, if we look at this line here, that's 0 decibels. Anything that goes beyond that is going to have results which you won't like. It is really hard to pin down. But the nice thing about the mastering suite and this whole thing is it will notify you if it goes over. So what will happen is it will go red like that, and it will tell you that previously it's just clipped. When a audio file undergoes digital clipping, it can change the actual sound depending on the playback device, or the playback service rather, because every single service which plays audio, if I get this correct, I might be wrong here, I think every single service that plays audio manages digital clipping differently. So that's why digital clipping normally sounds bad. If digital clipping occurs and you're blasting it across like your car speakers, it's going to sound awful, for instance. I don't know how Spotify does it. I think Spotify applies a thing which automatically detects if it's going to clip and then forces it down. I don't know. But basically, what we're looking to do here is eliminate any chance of that happening while preserving all the dynamics and also having this cool stereo effect which is called dual mono. And it's a lot of audio engineering, and you have a lot of these monitoring meters. So when I look at the stereo effects, I'm going to look at something like this. This is the phase meter, because for quiet sections you want it narrow, basically. For a nice little bridge, you want it narrower. So for this, you can see it narrows out because it's not as wide on the stereo spectrum. Here it's narrowed out, and then when it gets wide, these are your big sections. When all the guitars are playing and it's really heavy and it's like a big chorus, you want all your sections to be quite wide, essentially. And then what happens is you can just monitor all of this, including, like, obviously there's a big EQ curve up here. You can see all the different meters. You can see all the loudness. Loudness is quite important for streaming services nowadays. And this mastering suite, which you get with Studio One, then essentially enables you to build complex signal chains and diagnose where the problems are. It's a very surgical tool, and it's why I'll essentially just create a folder of everything without mastering effects on, and then I'll put it into this, and I can really kind of see, like, how can I get this competitively loud, or how can I achieve a really dynamic song with all the right indicators. So optical compression is what we want here, because it is to do with the types of compressors. Discrete is more like your traditional type of compressor. So what I'm going to do is change the discrete threshold back down a bit. Oof. So it's only knocking up a little bit.
For centuries, the bottom of the deepest seas. For centuries, the bottom of
Anyway, time to actually get on and master this. Oh gosh.
centuries, the bottom of the deep. For centuries. For centuries. For centuries, the bottom of the deep. Sick fucking gent riffs. For centuries, the bottom of the deepest seas had been shrouded in mystery and superstition. Some say it's a hostile place inhabited by the strangest creatures. From Bionicle, sick fucking backing gent riffs.
A constant struggle to decide between serious music and insane satire jokes with edgy themes. Yeah, yeah. It's I mean, there's a reason why folk music is good. Um, a lot of that is quite jokey, and a lot of that's quite serious as well. It's just got that kind of duality to it. I don't think it's ever really going to go away. I think Rammstein's a very good example. It's just the industrial scene in general um, is built on pissing people off for the sake of pissing people off. Hence why it's not very brand friendly. I'll put it that way. Industrial music isn't supposed to be brand friendly, despite the fact it's called industrial. Like it, it's just not brand friendly. It's That's kind of like the joke with musical industrial complex. It sounds like military industrial complex, but it also sounds like you've got a oh gosh, it's raining really heavily. It sounds like you've got some mental disorder, like you've got a musical industrial complex. You seem to want to make your music completely industrialized and automated and replace people. It also sounds like it's musical, it's industrial music, and it's complicated. So it's like just a phrase like that is it just kind of exaggerates the pun and the comedy and the humor in a lot of ways. And I think it's very important to have humor in music because, like, if you can't have humor in music, then what is the point in it? Like, it's just background music. Some days I was yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, music should be a profession. There's nothing wrong with wanting it to be a profession. We shouldn't ban we shouldn't ban stuff which is like not marketable as a general principle. Like people shouldn't ban music. I don't think anyone should really ban any music because if you start banning stuff, like unless it's openly awful and very very nasty, it doesn't make sense to like shut someone down just because they put a song out. But at the same time, you shouldn't feel like you're entitled to success as a musician, especially if you do a lot of these edgy themes in music, and like it just comes with the genre. It comes with the content matter. If you aren't willing to, uh, if you aren't willing to basically address the content matter in a certain way, um, and be polarizing in a certain way, then don't address the content matter. Um, People will normally respect you more for sticking to edgy themes and real serious shit, but it's just like the majority of people see music as an escape. They don't want to be reminded of things when they listen to music. Some people, and this is often a young audience, will use music as a emotional battery. So they'll essentially, most musicians I know are entitled beyond belief. They refuse to alter their music in any way to appeal and blame the market for not understanding good music. Yeah, that's the paradigm. Like literally, you've explained it well. Like it's not good music because you aren't a good marketer and you are operating within a market of ideas and of music. And if you have really niche music which is not sellable, then you're not gonna get success. I don't really understand why people find this difficult to understand. Um, there is a certain narcissism among artists that essentially they're going to just create something which is amazing, but it's their definition of amazing. It's like trying to emulate a really good musician you like, for instance. Um, a lot of people they'll literally think that I'm going to blow up because I made a track that sounds exactly like Humanity's Last Breath, or a track that sounds exactly like Periphery or Mick Gordon or whoever. And they think that just because they can emulate the sound well, it means that they're going to be successful. In actuality, it's not because they can emulate the sound which is what makes them successful. It's the fact that they can replicate that sound when it's needed, and they can call upon the knowledge gained from doing that to then create their own product to fill a different market. If you're the originator of something, you're going to get all the success. That's just the way it is. That's the way almost every single thing is built. If you're like, you might not come up with the idea, but someone else might be the person to implement the idea in a way that works well. This is the case with basically the entire Doom soundtrack. The guy is just better at implementing it, so therefore he deserves all the success. And then everyone else after that who didn't figure out the IP in relation to the implementation doesn't deserve any success. They don't get the credit because they suck, basically. Compared to that, they're just emulators. They've got this narcissistic complex of, oh, we just need to emulate this thing, and they're not combining anything new. And they think that just because their music is niche and it's like a perfect emulation of like this thing they have in their head, it's going to work really well. But in actuality, you could steal ideas off other people and literally be the ones to implement it better, and you'll be more successful. It's 100% implementation, 0% ideas, essentially, in music. Ideas help. Ideas help you create a reason to want to implement something. They help create a motivation to want to implement something. But that people only care about the reason, the motivation post success. They don't care about they do not care about the process at all. But it's the process that gets you all of the success. The bit that actually makes you successful, people don't care about. The ideas, people only care about, and the all that fluffy, nice sounding stuff. People only care about that once it's successful, because people are very hollow. They see a big number on a screen and they respect the status. They don't respect the ideas, because the majority of people cannot operate on a critical thinking basis and analyze stuff. They just have to see that it has a big number in front of it and therefore it's good. And that's just the way things are, and it's not going to change.
New from Bionicle. Sick fucking gent riffs.
Anyway, sick fucking jump riffs. success is not merit based. Success is 100% knowing the right people and working at getting ways to expose people to what you do, because the majority of the time, if you get someone in a room with a guitarist and you get the person to play guitar, and if they're half decent, most people will appreciate that, because it's normally quite rare to get someone who's actually good at an instrument. So you have like live scenes, and a lot of the time the live music breeds the recorded music, which breeds this. In actuality, it's like with game publishers, yeah, they constantly run playtesting. So they're going to get people to actually play the game to spread stuff via word of mouth. The reason why they run so much playtesting, and they'll send out like 2,000 something keys. The reason why they'll run so much playtesting is so people actually get it in their minds to like the thing. And then if you get those people to then live stream it, it creates a word of mouth. The most powerful marketing tool is people telling someone else to go and join this club they're in, because they enjoy doing it and they get gratification from it. What you're doing essentially when you show a new band to your friend is you're promising them attention in exchange for power. So basically, when you say, "Oh, let's join this musician community of foul musicians, for instance, or gent musicians," you invite your friend in there, and essentially what you're doing there is you're promising them attention and gratification and reward. And in exchange, you have power because you happen to know a lot about that subject and you can kind of control what that person is going to do. So now, if you extrapolate this out to a musician and their entire fan base, you'll have certain people in that fan base who know everything about the musician. They know what gear they use, they know what tours they did. They're basically the super fans. And what they have is the ability to create content, power. They have the ability to gain power, and they just fall. Yeah. Um, they have the ability to generate easy power over the other people in the fan base to then essentially just control everything. They get to control the scene. It gives them a really nice kick. That's why people gravitate towards numbers, because most people, unfortunately, if you're not wired to have really nice intellectual like ideas, discussions, like a lot of the I guess in and out of church, when I've played in church, a lot of the people, they talk very openly. Like, these are people from all different backgrounds, but because we have this centered moral belief, we essentially gravitate around talk of ideas and talk of philosophy rather than um, talk of like scenes and wanting to basically kick people out because we're gatekeeping and stuff like that. Like, it's more of an open forum. Whereas when you center something around the materialistic world, and this is like why a lot of people call modern music satanic. When you center stuff around the materialistic world, everything becomes power based, everything becomes selfish, everything becomes like, oh, we need to kick people out, or we need to gatekeep, or our music is better than theirs, our music is a better emulation of this artist than theirs, because it's a linear power scale. Whereas the people who are the actual innovators and the creators and the people who actually do the implementation understand that it doesn't matter who the heck their fans are. It just matters that they can create this structure to encourage this exchange and this gatekeeping and this law, basically, and this product to get invested in. Um, and then essentially, once they do that, it's like Helldivers, for instance. As soon as you have a successful video game, loads and loads of people are going to make a successful. Loads of people are going to then make a successful YouTube channel from making content on that video game, and vice versa. And that's essentially part of the marketing. You have like a hierarchy system, and there'll be a certain group within that, and I guess that's what you can call the band, which understand that they are developing this hierarchy system, and they're essentially like the elected leaders of said system. Um, and this is why music and politics is kind of like a diametric opposite, because you can create something which is completely devoid of assets, completely immaterial, and that's a musical idea. Whereas in politics, it's all about the material, it's all about the money. But both of them have the ability to hold this kind of hierarchical power structure. So a lot of the time, the control of music for politics and the control of politics via music. For instance, like with John Lennon and Imagine, and like with I guess you could say Rammstein and their political movement, Metallica when they went and played in Russia, Jimi Hendrix and when he played the national anthem. Power and music, and politics and music. They're very kind of interconnected in a diametric, polar opposite kind of way, and it's really interesting. Anyway, that has absolutely nothing to do with mastering, but it's just a really fun topic I like studying. Bruh. I can confirm I'm on my third kettle of tea today.
New from Bionicle. Sick fucking gent riffs.
That's what I mean. This is why we see so many diss tracks, and this is why we see so many like the whole point of rappers and these hip hop artists having beef with each other is essentially just to generate lore and a fandom. Essentially, there's no other point. These people probably manufacture half these controversies. That's because it's good marketing. They can just trick the news into reporting on them. It's simple.
Sick fucking gent riffs. Gent riffs.
Hello. I really like what this compressor does to the this compressor. It does this thing to the drum sound, which is really nice because it essentially controls the transients, and that basically means it controls the overall like punchiness of the drum. It's actually recommended by Mick Gordon himself, so it's probably good with someone with that much experience. This mix is actually rather balanced in terms of left and right.
Sick fucking gent riffs.
Right, so put that into our think that's about as good as we're gonna get it. Oh, bro, that's coming in loud though.
Sick fucking gent riffs.
I don't think we're clipping this hard enough. Maybe we are. Have you used Kfir? I have not used Kfir. I'm currently debating whether or not to clip the actual bass sections or not, because I think it could give a quite cool sound. But it might be too expensive. I feel like we kind of have to. We are getting some like it's that bit. Yeah, that bit was like really slamming through the limiter for some reason. I think it's because it's got so much bass. So we're gonna, because we've already got the loudness we want.
I have a dream.
I think because we've already got the loudness we want, we're just gonna kind of deal with it. It doesn't need to be like super slammed because it's already quite a loud song. It's got a lot going on in the mix. Right, so now we're going to do that again. By the way, I have 18 tracks to do, so I might just like completely lock in and only reply to messages every now and then. It's quite a loose song, so I want it to not be like too tame. This one kind of wants to be a bit more wild. Makes any sense. I've been looking into doing live stuff. I mean, I have this card here. I used to play like guitar with a bunch of people in a folk band in a church. I'm using the same master chain for every track of the master, or different chain for each track. I'm using the same plugins, and then I'm changing the settings because I just find it's better for consistency. I never normally change the mastering chain between an album. I might do it. I occasionally do it when I'm doing a load of single releases, but really, like, I want it to be consistent, so I'm not changing the this part, the inserts part. The post part is going to always be the same limiter, essentially, so that's applying to every single track across the thing. The inserts is the individual stuff on the tracks, and they'll follow the same order, essentially. And then normally, because it's already dual mono, and I'm applying this like thing I like to call delta gain regions, what'll happen is it accounts for pretty much everything. I don't normally need to change the order because it's actually quite a good order to work with. And that order basically is dynamic EQ, and then stereo management, saturation, and then what I do is, because I will have changed the dynamics of the song, I put it into a compressor again to really dial in the transients, and then I do like the clipping dynamics and the limiting after that. That's normally how I like to do it. Oh, and the other thing is, I do have a linear phase EQ on. What I'm gonna do at the end when I render this all out is crank that up to maximum, essentially just because max linear phase, I've heard, helps a lot. But the thing is, right now I'm trying to live monitor my changes, so beforehand I'd mix and master at the end of a chain with high latency. That's a bad idea. You want to be able to see what the dynamic EQ is doing in response to the drums. So what I tend to do is do the master pretty much I just do the master with linear phase on medium, and then at the end I'll switch it to max. It doesn't normally make a big enough change to be important, but it's just a good practice, I guess. If anything was really jumping out at me, I'd notice it on the render and then go back and fix it. So I feel like we want a combination of optical for these kind of bits. Kind of feel the pull on that. Yeah, so you don't normally hear much. I mean, you can't hear down to 20. So generally speaking, most kick drums, like the lowest low kind of toms and impacts you'll get, only go down to around about 40 hertz. So I just everything after 35 I just cut out. So then what happens is you can see that this is kind of designed to go in, like this line here is 20 hertz. It's basically designed to go in and hit 20 hertz right at the bottom. So if there is any signal down there at 20 hertz that wants to be recognized by the ear, then it can be, but it's probably not that necessary. And it's definitely not necessary for the limiting and stuff. Because the other thing is, if you don't mop up those, like, when you're doing a lot of pitch shifting as well, especially if you pitch shift stuff down, and you're doing a lot of electronic sound design, you'll have a presence of 20 hertz, and you'll have a presence of super high frequencies, so like 20,000 hertz. You'll have both of them if you do a lot of pitch shifting. The problem is, you end up with build up, especially if you have reverb down there, and you've pitch shifted reverb, is you'll end up with a mass build up essentially and stuff like that if you've got resonances. And then what happens is that could be pinging a one of the meters and you wouldn't even realize it. So generally when I do electronic stuff which involves a lot of like bass sound design, I normally just operate on a basis of I'm just gonna do this nice curved thing. For a traditional mix, it's not that necessary. If you just got guitars, drums, bass, all that stuff, like traditional mixes, not that necessary. It might be necessary if you've got a lot of noise in the mix for whatever reason. But generally speaking, electronic music causes the need for it because if you pitch shift stuff, you're going to end up with frequencies you just can't hear, essentially. Especially if it's pitch shifted really high. Sorry, I'm just going to close my window because the road's quite loud. There we are. Right. There's also the debate whether or not you should. There's also the debate whether or not you should do it for high frequencies as well. Normally, what I actually do, well, it doesn't matter as much to be honest with high frequencies because they're high frequencies. What I normally actually do is on all my instrument buses, I'll just do this. Unless it's like sound effects or unless it's other day that SoundCloud turns tracks rendered at 48k, so they do it to. Yeah, I do everything in 48k. I don't give a shit about SoundCloud. I don't release music on SoundCloud. 48k is just superior. It sounds better in almost every single way. It's DVD quality, and it like I don't know why people use 44.1. I get that it's standard, but like most good services like don't do that shit. And at the end of the day, sample rate doesn't make a very big difference. So what I'll do is on all my instrument, I mostly do 48 component mastering before just glance to test volume. To be honest, most of the time it's not even that bad. Like 99% of the time, it's not even that bad. What is more important is your average loudness, because if it's coming in at, I mean, something which is 6 LUFS, even if it's turned down about 4 decibels, it's probably going to be louder than the majority of like non-professional masters, just because it's that loud and it's that compressed. So just master it as loud as you can, within reason. That's basically just what I do. This is what I do to most of my instrument buses. I'll do a brick wall at 16,000. Why do I do this? It's because actually, if you listen to the MP3 versions of a lot of songs, they have literally like a hard cut around 16k. So if there is any like extra frequency stuff which I want people to hear like on a WAV file or a FLAC file or whatever, then I'll just do this. Like it doesn't matter. Like I don't see a need to have stuff above 16,000. But like as I said, if it's like a noise riser or it's like something which you kind of just want to have like a little bit of noticing, it's fine. But generally speaking, like it's only cymbals, electronic cymbals, and like the occasional bits of sound design which will actually even get up into this region and actually matter. So I'm gonna remove this. That's what I do to a lot of my instrument buses. Yeah, -9 is all you need. Like, in actuality, your and this is quite a contentious topic, so get ready. In actuality, your local like LUFS region, if you just did an entire song with zero like ambience or anything and it's a metal track, you should expect that if it's like balls to the walls, like constant like noise basically, because that's what it is. It could be something like death metal. If it's balls to the walls, you should expect that around -5 LUFS. If it's not completely balls to the walls, has some like transitions and stuff, but it's quite a short song, you'd expect that to be around like -6.5. If it's got like a nice clean ambient section in the middle, probably around -7. The more ambience you add, the less the LUFS reading is going to be. Those little regions where it's just pure metal, they need to literally be around like -5, and that's what most people don't seem to get. They seem to think, oh, as long as my average score is good, then I'm fine. In actuality, it's just an uncompetitive master, especially if you master stuff to -14 average. -9 average is fine. I'd say it's actually good to be a volume snob, especially if you're trying to put out stuff to get competitive. Like unless you've got a pre-existing fan base of like, let's say like 30,000 listeners or more. So interesting mega light stuff, but bring me the horizon a few times. Minus 3. Yeah. So unless you've already got a pre-existing fan base of around 30,000, like you should be a loudness snob until you're successful, and then after that, it's just like if you really want the best masters you can get, just outsource it to a freaking like mastering guy, or equally, um, like just put stuff out. Like the overall sound and the transients and the mix is more important than getting really snobby about the loudness. It's just easier to be quick with it. There's something really interesting going on, because if I push this too wide, then what happens is the guitars end up dominating the mix too much. Oh, the other thing, you can expect, if you have an instrumental track and you have a vocal track, they're probably going to have a difference in loudness of about -1 lufs. So basically, the vocal track's going to be louder. That's going to be around 5. Loudness wars. Loudness wars only matters when you're competing in a what I like to call an unstable ecology. So something where you aren't already established. Oh, sorry, like if you're in a low competition, unstable musician ecology, let's say, and this is related to like evolutionary science and competitiveness, because fuck it, why not? Um, then basically, loudness wars matter, just so you can basically power shove other people out of the competition just by the fact that you're gonna knock a certain amount of people over to your side just by the fact that your thing's louder and sounds better because it's louder, because people are dumb when they listen to music, unfortunately. I wish people understood that if you turn the volume of something up, you're gonna like it more, but they don't seem to, and then they question why stuff is quiet when it's on render. By the way, this is the best way. Like, I see a lot of people talking about like cutting the mids out. 300 BPMs. Yeah, yeah. I see a lot of people talk about cutting the mids out. I don't like. Hold on. Hold on. Why is that like that? It makes me question something. Oh my gosh. I like how you described it, an unstable ecology. Yeah, it basically means an unstable ecology is where you have a lot of competing ideas, or a lot of competing, like, let's say, like, different species of whatever, all competing, and they share some sort of, like, genetic identity, but then um, they're all kind of scrambling to find out what the new innovation is that'll make stuff blow up. And then if you're operating in that, you basically just need raw power, and you can get that by outdoing the competition in terms of mix and master quality. Yeah, exactly. In for everything, structure, songwriting, sound, sample choices, literally everything. You've got to, if you want to like actually like, it's kind of ironic if you want to view stuff in a way that'll bring you creative success. You kind of need to literally um motivate yourself by a lot of science and a lot of technical aspects, and just apply these like rules of nature, I guess, as you could call them, to a lot of the music and what you create. Because at the end of the day, I think about a lot of times of justifying buying gear, plugins, now will edge up stuff, right? Invest in the gear and stuff. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Dictional signal processing and music production. Yeah, like a lot of new technologies, so these deep learning algorithms, they operate purely on a evolutionary kind of basis. So they use human input and human preference. So basically, people saying, I like that, I don't like that, I like this, I don't like this. And they automatically kind of operate on that level to then produce something which outcompetes all the other options. And that's why when you have an AI music creator, it will give you loads of variations basically, because it wants you to choose and compete, because it's trying to harvest data off you. So it creates the micro competition, and then whoever is listening back on it chooses the better version. You've got to imagine music is a bit like that, and that's why you kind of want to put out, especially if you really want to make your music better, put out a really like uh have you used much generation in music composition? I made an entire channel actually, and then I did like a little secret reveal because I wanted people's unbiased opinions. If you want to check it out, I can link to it. Um, have a look at that. I wanted to understand the technology basically, and it made me realize, and this is why I haven't posted a lot of music for a while, that I need to rethink my strategy, because somehow I need to uh, avoid getting replicated. Oh my god, you said if you really want to make your music better. I can't actually remember what I was on about. if you really want to make your music better, just literally focus on the natural rules of everything, like evolutionary ideas and how they propagate, and essentially what you need to do is create a production system which can easily produce sounds which are very, very good, basically. So if you really, oh yeah, I remember what I said now. If you really want to make your music better, you just put out a really, really long album. Just put out the longest freaking album you can, like at that point in time, and then just sit on it. Don't release it to people. Send people like procedural demos of stuff, and be prepared to go back and change those songs depending on what people think of them. And basically, you just want to create a bunch of. This is what Nine Inch Nails do, by the way. You just create a bunch of demos, like a really long collection of music, and then what you can do is you can send that to people individually, or you can drop stuff like. This is essentially why the production channel and Discord exists, because you can gauge like reaction. So this gets like one little reaction. I can go up, and you know, when people agree with you or people like something or they post a demo, you can gauge the actual reactions. So this one I reacted well to, and this is why the ping feature exists. So when you can essentially ping people or put them in these priority channels, and you'll be able to kind of gauge reactions. So this one was received quite well, so it essentially got like a load of reactions, which means that this guy is obviously doing something right, if you know what I mean. And you can kind of just generate a load of demos, put them out. The only problem with doing this is that technically you're telling your competition what you're up to. But to be honest, since we're all musicians, we don't really care. You know, like most people do this in their free time. If you were doing this for something like, if you're doing this for something like a top secret aircraft like this one, you know, you wouldn't take this approach. You can't take this approach. You have to basically do scientific prototyping and testing. Yeah. Because I don't make a lot of new more. Yeah, I mean that's completely understandable. But the other point is, you need to find people who are going to give you good and accurate feedback. So you can't just post it in any Discord server you like. You have to post it in a Discord server that is relevant, and you have to basically monitor your own little micro scene. So you have to basically monitor the people who are closest to you, get them to give you feedback by posting as many different types of demos as possible of different types of music, and then you essentially create this idea of what is and isn't well received. If you really want to do stuff like it's kind of like alpha and beta testing for video games, you know. A lot of what gets added to a game is reliant on the closed alpha and closed beta playtesting in terms of user interaction, user experience, and all that stuff, like the UI especially. The UI design of a video game is almost entirely from the original playtesters which play it. I'm a bit snobby in feedback recently. Yeah. No, your feedback needs to be as like, it's good to have aggressively critical feedback which is constructive and as much as possible. Yeah. Streaming is also a very, very useful tool. Yeah, I mean, philosophies for music creation is basically there is stuff that works, and then there is just stuff which does not work, and then you have this really spicy thing. I was literally discussing this earlier, how people don't care about the process, and they're not going to care about the process. People only care about the process when you're smaller. If you're not super successful, people will only care about your process because they hear something which they can have for themselves and they can actually reach you on an individual level. That's why when you're smaller, people will care about your process. I find a lot of people approach me because I have a lot of processes on how to do stuff quickly and efficiently, and also to get good results on like a batch amount of stuff, and I'm able to put out a lot of music. So people approach me because I have a good process. Whereas, if you're famous, people only want to hear about the ideas. They want to hear about the actual original side of it, which is this complete paradigm. It's like it's only the implementation matters in terms of music production. But then, as soon as you have any sort of success, you've got to essentially put out this counter information on how to make music and the actual ideas behind what were made. Because basically, what's going to happen is the general public need it dumbed down for them, and they need it simplified. And it's also good marketing. You find this all the time with like artists, like well, every single pop artist pretty much, I can imagine. And pop artists are even better because they don't actually write the majority of their own music. They normally have a producer behind them who keeps kind of secret. So the vast majority of the time, a pop artist has absolutely no idea how the song was actually made in the first place. So they're actually extremely useful because then they can just they're basically a constant counter information tool, and they will only say stuff which gets them clout and sounds good. Yeah, I mean, Taylor Swift is a prime example. I'm pretty sure she doesn't even write any of her own songs. Like, she does now, but she used to not write any of her old songs, which is actually kind of crazy. And that's why to get successful, the process is more important, because most of the time these big pop artists, they never write their own songs. But then once you get successful, it's more important to talk about the ideas behind your music and make it digestible to people. So I've decided that Baraki is so aggressive that I have to put on this thing, which is basically like an ultra hard limiter. If I don't put this on, it's gonna just clip the signal. And you can see that's working really well. Yeah. So AI music is actually a brilliant tool. By the way, I'm gonna probably end this stream in about half an hour, so because I'm finding that I'm not being very efficient because I'm breaking up and talking a lot. I just kind of want to reveal my mastering process and just do a general Q&A. But essentially, what I found with AI music is you actually have this method now to bulk test ideas and bulk prototype ideas. The only problem, um, the only problem with AI music, and this is what I've criticized Udio for. Oh no, don't worry, it's not your fault. I'm breaking up. Like, if I didn't want to be distracted, I wouldn't open up a stream. I just basically want to show people this mastering process. I might actually no, because I'm gonna get these mastered. I'm going on holiday tomorrow, so I need to just basically get this done and turn it around so I can meet the deadline I want to. It's nothing to do with like the fact that I don't want to talk to people on stream. It's just because I have a deadline basically for this to be done. But essentially, with AI music, and this is where I criticize UD a lot. It's a tool that is built to replace musicians, but the thing is, musicians are the ones who find it most useful. So essentially, what would make Udio or one of these services about 10 times better is if it gave you all the stems of the different instruments, if it gave you the actual MIDI of the actual track itself as well, and all the actual info, so like the BPM, like the key of it, and especially like something to do with MIDI. It cannot actually do that. Why can't it do that? Because something really weird about this music is it doesn't even adhere to 12 tone equal temperament. All this AI music doesn't even have an actual like proper scale to it, if that makes any sense. It's complete. A lot of it is just not even tuned correctly, and this is because what it does is it doesn't like break the songs down, like identify, oh, it's playing that set of notes and that scale and that it's adhering to these rules like you'd see something like with the generator. Um, I think gent.io gen. This is it. It's this is really useful. It'll give you the guitar tab for it. But what I'm saying about the problem with Udio and a lot of these AI music models is they don't have these these input parameters. They don't have these patterns. You can see that there's clearly something going on here. You're including the types of notes you're going to put into this generator. and you're defining the input parameters, which basically means that you have customization over what the outcome is, and that means that it, to a certain extent, to the extent where it can tell you exactly how it's played on guitar. I just read that. Oh man. To the extent where it can actually get played on guitar, it can tell you the tabs for it, for instance, and that's just one of the features, I'm pretty sure. View guitar tabs, unlimited riffs, priority customer support. Fine, cool. Yeah, at least you get the guitar tabs. You can turn guitar tabs into how to actually play something. I could grab my guitar there and play it. The problem with Udio is it doesn't even adhere to musical scales. So a lot of the time the stuff's just blatantly out of tune. Why is that? If it's not adhering to any musical scales, why the frick is it generating these songs that sound good? And that's because all they've done is they've taken a very strong deep learning algorithm to analyze not the actual songs and the stems separated and broken down to analyze all the individual notes which get played. They don't do that. They just take the WAV file and they take the actual recorded final version of the song, and then they basically put that into the deep learning model with a load of genre tags, and the genre tags are the most important part because that's what basically lets it group stuff together. So it's not just a bunch of random information inputs. It's essentially like, oh, I want you to now go and recreate this style of music, and that is what allows it to accelerate the deep learning algorithm because it's able to essentially narrow down what the ideal sound is. And it's also likely that they'll stratify what the most successful types of music are. So basically, they'll be able to go in and like say how many streams does this have, how many how many plays does it have, how well did it do on release, when was it released, stuff like that. And it'll be able to identify. The only thing it can do, by the way, is identify song structures. It can definitely identify song structures. So there's some sort of. I think it's lyrical. I do think it works based on lyrics, but it can identify song structures, and that's all it can do. It's like it was made by a programmer and not a musician, essentially. So it's quite odd. I find it's only good for like inspiration in terms of like general themes. In terms of like actual usefulness and being able to like give you MIDI and stems for stuff, it doesn't do that. Once it does do that, then it's actually fair. I'd say it's very, very fair because then you're basically given a song which you can go and reproduce quite easily, mind you, with a better mix and all this other stuff. But it doesn't do that. It only sells you the end product, and at that it sells you a compressed end product where the mix is terrible. The thing is, even if you separate it all out, it's still gonna sound like ass basically. Like it's still gonna just suck. Um, I just find it would be much better if it actually knew what it was creating to the extent where it could essentially become an actual useful music tool. At the moment, it isn't a useful music tool. You still have to apply your musician knowledge in order to recreate things. Whereas someone who is a beginner, for instance, could essentially generate a um, I mean, yeah, if you're fast with MIDI creation inputs, that's good. But someone who's a beginner, for instance, who doesn't really have ear training, could then take these tracks which are generated and then learn how to mix them properly or something like that. And then someone might even send you like an AI track, and they'd tell you how can I reproduce this and remix this, and then that would actually create work in the economy, because they'd say like I've made this track, but how do I make it actually sound good? Um, there is like for Steam as well. I believe they've got. I think you have to have like a disclosure statement on all the AI game development tools you use when you publish a game on Steam, or else it's liable to be taken down. So at the moment, at least, composing for stuff is quite well protected. There's new laws being passed through in California which basically stop. There's something to do with AI and the restriction of it. I expect it to I mean, I know it is banned off streaming services. They'll remove it if it's blatantly AI generated at the moment. However, I expect that to change pretty soon. What I expect in terms of AI regulation is some sort of like auditory QR coding of a load of different stuff. So you know how like an MP3, for instance, has a click sound at the start, and that helps it save some of the information. That's why MP3s are terrible to listen to in succession. Um, an MP3 can store that information in the actual audio itself, and that's how it reduces some of the file size. Whereas with AI stuff, there should be like some sort of regulation to basically say like periodically have something which lets you detect that it's AI. Maybe it's like a very specific like tone or something at a very like at specific timestamps which tell you that it's AI for like a very short period. Stuff which people generally don't notice, or just something as simple as that, and then a scanner can basically compare um, those exact timestamps and say like, okay, this is AI generated because this sample has that pitch and frequency. Um, I think doors right so doors was usually just use them as song generators. Yeah. I don't see a problem with experienced artists generating stuff using AI and then recreating it. I think that's actually quite a valid created method. Um, because then you're basically just prototyping stuff, and I always say artists should always prototype their songs before they release them, and they should rework them and retrack them as much as they can, um, to the extent where they still meet their deadlines and whatnot and still be professional. But this is a way to quickly, especially if you're working with someone who wants composing done, or you're essentially trying to try out ideas with different people. If you're by yourself, you don't like it's useful sometimes, but most of the time you just have better ideas by yourself. But if you're, especially if you're working with other people and you're trying to operate within a wider band of influences, because of course you're going to have your own band of influences, but when you work with other people, and especially when you work with someone instructing you to compose something, you have to figure out what their influences are in order to create something which they're actually on board with creating. And this is even more the case for composing, because they'll have certain preferences, and they get to call the shots a lot of the time, especially if they're paying for something. Um, what you want to do basically is create like a system where you can rapidly prototype styles and genres, and that's what UDO is actually good for. You can say, I'll just make something in the style of this, and then people will often complain that it's not the exact same, but I mean you've recreated it. Um, However, it's not very easy to do that. You still require specialist knowledge in order to do so. If it gave you, as I said, if it gave you all the MIDI and it gave you the separate stems, then you could at least drop them in and use them as a reference, and it'd be a bit more professional. And then we could actually talk about advancing the state of the music industry, instead of putting out loads and loads of demos where you know they're just not going to do well, and trying to get feedback and then just scrapping all those projects in your DAW. What you could do is you could generate an AI version, send it to someone, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's pretty neat, and then you can say, I'm going to go back and rework it, and then you can quite easily go back and rework it, and then all of a sudden now you've got something which is published and masterable, because you've essentially injected your own personal influence into it, even if it's done based on like training of other musicians, like copyrighted melodies and chords and whatnot and songs. Um, if you're essentially going back to the drawing boards with it and then redoing all the masters essentially, um, then that avoids the legal grey area. I don't know why people haven't tried to push for this, because it would actually make people support the thing, instead of obviously being something which is directly trying to replace freelance musicians. However, the people who are going to complain about it are ghostwriters. So there's this epidemic in Hollywood. Maybe it's where you're talking about. I don't feel like you can really replicate the pools from mainstream. Yeah, no, 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 yeah. It's not gonna replicate any of the niche stuff which people actually like. Like those moments which are recognizable in songs and actually give something a sonic signature. It's not gonna be able to replace those. But if I show you this, So the people who are going to complain about the development of AI music into an actual useful musician tool are going to be the people who, for instance, work on a payroll under like something like a Hans Zimmer production company. Because they're the people being directly replaced by this. Independent freelance musicians, independent composers, indie composers, and people who just put music out on Spotify, they're gonna see this as something useful because it's basically taking out a lot of the prototyping work, which essentially wastes their time, like trying different demos and like deleting ones which they don't like. Um, let me find. Let me find the statement. I'm trying to find. I put it in my Discord somewhere. It's on about how many people. Yeah, here it is. Right, so back-end royalties, and these are the people who are going to basically get deleted by the AI composing. Are the people who don't actually get the credit on all these songs for writing the tunes and stuff and coming up with the ideas, because essentially Hans Zimmer doesn't actually write any of his own music, and sue me for this if I'm wrong, but I'm being a bit hyperbolic. Essentially, he directs a lot of different composers in a production company, and these people aren't credited a lot of the time. They're just credited as additional arrangers and stuff, and they'll come up with a lot of the ideas. However, they'll have like co-composers who help like organize the ideas together and direct people. So it's basically this big musician idea hub. So the people who just rapidly prototype different music ideas to like sound good are unfortunately going to be replaced by AI in this instance, but probably in Hollywood quite soon. Um, and then the idea from that is probably going to be that you're going to then hire people to be music AI interpreters. So instead of being a grounds up like ideas machine who just generates ideas, instead your role is probably going to be you're going to have less people as like additional arrangers, um, or additional music. You're gonna have less of these like payrolled ghostwriter people, and you're gonna have more of these like arrangers who specialize in interpreting the generated music from these models. And I personally don't see an issue with that. I don't see an issue with that as long as you're not directly posting stuff. He has 60 people behind him willing to give it a shot. Yeah, no, literally. That's what I keep saying. Hans Zimmer is just a very smart businessman. He's not an original composer in a lot of ways. He's very good at talent acquisition, and the reason why I know about this a lot of the time is because I'm basically as an aerospace engineer, I'm groomed to go into the defense industry. Um, so a lot of the defense industry, and the reason why they push hiring from other countries especially, is because it's all about talent acquisition. It's much easier to have a good economy and offer a better lifestyle, um, and then essentially poaching all the talent and actually making them useful than killing off your competitor's main set of engineers. Like that, they're still a useful resource, if that makes any sense. So when you understand this method, you understand why Hollywood has so many ghostwriters and they do a lot of this talent acquisition, because basically it stops other studios like starting up. Mix both are seen online. Maybe I could Yeah, I mean, he knows what he's doing, and I won't not give him that. Like he does have technical capabilities, but at the end of the day, a lot of those signature kind of tracks which you hear, which he doesn't directly inject into, um, like people don't get credits for them a lot of the time. And I agree that this might be an oversimplification and me being overly critical of it, but I just generally think that if you work on a track at all, like full stop, and have any personal injection into it, then you should be entitled to the 9.1% of songwriter royalties. If you aren't credited, you don't deserve royalties. You should just be paid up front. And some people can like some people argue against that, but like if you don't use someone's name, you don't need to pay them royalties because it's to do with marketing as well. Like your name is as important for marketing as any sort of like big marketing push for stuff. Time people will only listen to a film soundtrack because it has the word Hans Zimmer written on it, um, or the name Hans Zimmer written on it and plastered all over it because they know it. He runs a reliable production company which produces good and reliable soundtracks, and people like they basically manufacture this misconception that he's the one making all the music and he's super prolific and he's the dude basically just like kind of putting it all together. When in actuality, his role is probably a lot more limited than people think in terms of the actual musical creation process. However, um, gosh, that is a lot of dust. I need to dust these things. However, you know, it's very important to recognize that he runs stuff. He doesn't originate and create stuff. I think the better model is to just have less people and therefore have less overheads and pay that one individual person a bit more money and allow them to keep the royalties because 99% of the time you don't need that many musicians working on stuff. You're going to have so much redundant work and so much fucking around to the point where it's just going to be like you're just going to end up with an inefficient workplace. And then if you want an inefficient workplace, you do what From Software do. So you do what From Software do, and you build an in-house music band, and you'll notice this is what Bionicle did with a lot of their stuff. But basically, you create a band of musicians, and this is the point of a band. It's basically you're their manager and label. Um, you know, you're gonna just create a band. You're gonna license that band, and you now own the band, and you pay those people a stable wage. You know, that's basically what you do. If you want to run a studio and not have to worry about inefficiency and fucking around and all this other stuff. However, I much prefer the model where people are entitled to royalties, and even if it's as low as 10%, that's still the same as a record label because at least with a stable in-house band for something, um, you're going to be able to like get a pension on the company or something. It's probably a role where you're going to get a pension or something, and it's also going to be able to like that wage is also going to cover you in those periods where you're not very active. The problem with freelancing is essentially to cover those periods where you're inactive and also to cover your pension, you need to have music revenue as one of the passive sources of income so that then you can essentially afford to live in those times where you're just sitting there creating. Um, props to they're all waged. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like, um, I'm pretty sure pop stars get a cut of the royalties, and that's why it's kind of a good deal. Like, they'll lose 90% of the revenue they get, but they'll get to keep that 10%. And because they're so famous, that 10% is still very, very good. They also don't have to do a lot of work when compared to like an independent producer. But the thing is, you want to hire the independent producers because as soon as you hire them and they get money, what they're going to do, and this is exactly what Mick Gordon did, this is exactly what Hans Zimmer did. If you find someone who's particularly good at composing, and you inject that person with money, they're going to hopefully use that money to reinvest and create systems and also hire people and make their own production company. And then instead of operating as just a freelancer where it's company to person, you can then operate on a company to company basis and you can have kind of like a mutual talent exchange. And then during those periods when stuff isn't really coming in and revenue isn't coming in, you can just act like a company and basically go and find other clients and operate with other clients, and you can have maybe you have multiple main composers working at this company and they can manage the different projects at the different time and bring in a revenue which pays off everyone else as well. It's kind of like a collective. Oh yeah. um the digital world has a lot of like this is what I don't understand. People are allowed to use your name. People are allowed to use your face. People are allowed to use your credits on stuff. But if they don't want to pay you revenue for all of those things, then they're operating on an immoral basis because basically they're using you as a product to push their marketing and their revenue. And that basically essentially means that if they don't give you revenue of a certain amount, that person is basically saying that they own you and you're basically their slave. That's why artists should always be entitled to revenue if they have their credits on something. Otherwise, you pay them the proper rate for something which is called ghostwriting or ghost production, which is recognized as having to be paid more, because then you can look at it as more of a single exchange basis. You are forced to look at it in terms of this is just one job, and then what happens is the majority of people who are comfortable doing ghostwriting and ghost production just take the one big payment and then they're fine with it. That's actually the Netflix model. I wrote a document on this in my Discord. So yeah, if you want to check out this document, it's in my Discord in the announcements channel. It essentially dissects the entire royalties issues and what I think are good models at least and what I see as bad models. Obviously, I'm gonna debate that with like a lot of the Hollywood managers would probably tell me I'm delusional X, Y, Z, and I shouldn't be entitled to anything. But I'm not American and I'm not from Hollywood. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna be wrapping up the stream. I think the stream was very successful because we had some very good questions and very good talking points, and I was able to show off a lot of like the kind of mastering tips and tricks. So remember, if you ever want to hit me up or message me about anything, then please do. I have the Discord. If you need an invite to the Discord, I'm going to post one right now. Let me just grab I just do it. 1 hour, 7 days, limit.